it's local officials, local selectmen and mayors and so on that are negotiating these deals. And they've been negotiating the deals, pretty generously in the sense that they've been happening all over the place because the data centers are very good for towns because they create so many jobs, bring people in with high incomes that could buy houses and stuff like that. And so if you take a sleepy town that hasn't really seen much in the last 20, 30 years and put a data center there, then they're going to be a whole bunch of happy residents.
That was the director of the White House's National Economics Council, Kevin Hassett, talking about the reasons of why these small towns might choose to invest in these AI data centers. Now, AI data centers, as we know, have had a lot of backlash in recent years because of noise complaints as well as environmental impact. However, Kevin Hassett argues that a lot of these small, sleepy towns benefit from these AI data centers because they create jobs. But as an economist, I want to look through the research to see what it says about how these AI data centers have been affecting the employment levels of these small towns, because we actually have a recent study from the Brookings Institute that details what exactly happens when companies build AI data centers. So how does Brookings do this? Well, they compile a list of all of the data centers that have been built between 2008 and 2024, and they determine what county that data center was built in. And they essentially compare the counties that have data centers to the counties that don't, controlling for outside factors. And what they find is that in the 5 to 6 years after a data center has been constructed, we see that employment rises by about 5 to 6% on average. If we break it down by industry, construction employment increases by about 11%, and IT employment increases by about 22%. We can also look at how wages change over time, and for existing workers as well as new hires, wages increase by about 3 to 4%, 5 to 6 years after construction, without any real changes to housing costs that we might expect. Now, what's interesting about this study is that there's a very significant difference between the changes in employment depending on what type of AI company is building these data centers. So for your Microsofts and your Googles, your cloud and AI companies, when they build data centers, they do see increases in employment. However, when you are talking about what are known as data center landlords, right? Places that basically build up data centers and then lease them out to other companies, the employment gains from those companies is stunted. In fact, we don't see any significant gains to IT and tech jobs when these data center landlords are the ones that are building up the AI infrastructure. Now, what conclusions can we draw from something like this? Well, I think from a policymaker's perspective, you have to weigh the pros and cons of what these data centers might provide to communities versus some of the drawbacks that we've talked about in prior videos. So yes, Kevin Hassett is correct in that we have more jobs from these AI companies and these data centers being built. But the fact that residents who continue to live there have higher electricity and utility costs, the fact that there are changes to the environment, the fact that there are increases in noise, among other things that could impact health, those are the things that these communities have to make a decision about whether or not it's worth it for their citizens to build these data centers in light of the fact that you get a modest increase in the number of jobs that are there. And honestly, that's a thing that a lot of state and local governments, which have offered tax breaks to a lot of these AI companies, have refused to reckon with the more long-term implications to communities of these AI data centers, which I think is what's drawing a lot of frustration about them being built. And that's all I got for now. As always, if you have any questions, let me know.